Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. This is Phil from the Room for Heart podcast. I'm excited to be joined by my great friend, John Haller. We'll get to John Haller in just a second, but again, we are talking about and learning from one another about the kind of human factors behind what we do. We're talking with people about why they get up in the morning, why they kind of lean hard into the work that they are pursuing, and excited to chat about that with John. John has been a long time personal friend. We'll hear some stories as we get into it about the wisdom that John has given me, the encouragement, the ways that he's helped me move forward in my own personal story, and excited to hear about the ways that he's kind of processed through and moved forward and picked up momentum in his personal story. So John and I actually met through CrossFit, a local CrossFit gym that we were both going to, and had some shared interests, some things in common. John introduced me to sushi. I had never had sushi before John. I'll tell you a funny story about that. I'll just dive right in. So John, I don't think you've heard my side of the story ever or have known this side, but I had never actually gotten sushi before our first lunch date. So John and I ended up going to a place here in New Hampshire called Yu's, and we sat down for sushi, and he was like, have you ever been here? And I was like, oh no, I've never been here. And he was like, oh, cool. I actually come here all the time. I know the menu really well. Do you mind if I order for us? And I was like, no, go for it. Do you remember this at all, John, by the way?
Vaguely.
Yeah. So we sit down and he's getting ready to order, and I'm also at this point in my story a picky eater. I grew up in the Midwest, meat, potatoes, and I had never had sushi before. And so I'm slightly nervous, but I'm kind of just like a not nervous person. But like, this could be gross. Like, I don't want to embarrass myself. And as he's getting ready to order, he asked me like, "Hey, are you willing? Are you up for whatever, or should I be a little bit like tame this down a little bit, be calm?" And I was like, "Oh no, like whatever." And I was like, "Why did I say that? That was stupid." And
it's a typical Phil answer.
Typical Phil answer. And he was like, "Oh, great," because the last time, and he actually mentioned a shared friend. Like the last time I came out, I met Dave, and Dave was cautious. Like he wanted to be a cautious sushi eater. So I couldn't get any of the fun stuff with him, like any of the stuff with like roe, like fish eggs. And I'm like, but then it came out and it was super yum. So, I was really glad that I gave John the freedom to order whatever and followed his lead. And that's kind of the story of our friendship, really. John inviting me into places that are a little bit uncomfortable, but I am super happy that I accepted his invitation. So John, if you don't mind, could you just tell us real quick about your day-to-day job at PTC and what you're doing there?
So I have been with PTC for a little over 10 years now. I'm responsible for we have 4 product lines, main product lines at PTC: CAD, computer aided design, product lifecycle management, augmented reality, and Internet of Things. And so I'm responsible for the product lifecycle management vertical, and for sales of that globally. And so, PTC is about a $1.4 billion annual recurring revenue company, subscription-based, SaaS-based company.
It's not terrible.
And so that product line is about 400 million of that 1.4. And so we operate everywhere, but primarily U.S., Europe, and Japan and China is our 4 biggest markets. And so I run the sales teams for that.
So that's not always been your job. When you entered PTC, you were you just entered in as a salesperson of all of their product lines. Is that right?
Right. I came in as a major account exec, and so I had some big accounts like Philips and Boston Scientific and Fresenius Medical Care, and so I was representing all of our product lines specifically for those big global accounts. And then I moved into a regional director role, and so I had all the accounts on the East Coast of the United States, and a team of it varied over the years, but between 6 and 8 sellers, and then I moved in this role a little more than a year and a half ago.
Yeah, and you've obviously developed a ton as a salesperson, as a professional, and I can remember, when you were in the major account exec role, and you were thinking about the regional sales leader role. Actually, that came up once, and you didn't get it, if I remember right. And I super loved the way that you handled that. You had been you were a senior member of the team, and your boss left, and so that position came available. So you and maybe even another team member or two applied for it, and then some outside people. Can you just talk about that story?
Sure. I mean, at the time, I guess I should start by saying that I didn't sell software until I came to PTC. And so previously, I had a career. I started in the Navy, and so I was an officer in the Navy on a ship. I then went into more IT work with Procter & Gamble, and then with IBM. And so I was, computer science major in college, so much more of a technical background. And prior to coming to PTC, I was with IBM for almost a decade on the services side. So I started as a consultant, certified consultant, doing networking engagements, which, routers, firewalls, switches, all of that world, and transitioned into selling services with IBM. And so probably, 6+ years of my time with IBM, I was selling services, but in the services world, as I'm sure you know very well, Phil, when you sell something, you get to continue to own it through the implementation and make sure that it's successful. And so that was kind of my background. I transitioned into selling software when I came to PTC. And so, transitioning from being a major account exec to regional director, my attitude was more of, it could be good, right? It met a lot of requirements. The job was still in my area, so I wouldn't have to move. I was familiar with the team. I knew a lot of the accounts in there. The major accounts that I currently ran were in the geography, and so it fit a lot of needs there. But as I went through the interview process, I was very upfront and honest with the guys that were interviewing me that I'm interested in the job. It seems like I could do a good job in the role, but I'm not laying in bed every night saying, "Gosh, I can't wait to be a regional director."
Yeah.
Right. So I put my best effort into it and tried, but ultimately they decided to go with somebody else that was much more hungry for it than I was. And so I went away, kind of took it as a valuable experience of learning more about what that type of role was going to entail. And I think it was a year and a half later, the opportunity came up again, because unfortunately the guy that took it was not successful in the role. Yeah. And so it came back around to me, and I was able to get it the second time. So.
I think one of the reasons I wanted to talk about that, so a couple significant reasons. I'm getting a little bit of echo here, so I'm going to adjust some sound on my side. Are you getting that too?
A little bit of a buzz.
That's unfortunate. Oh well, I guess you live in the moment and you deal with it. So we'll just keep on recording. So that is super echoey here, and it's bugging me. And you're just listening through your computer speakers, right? On your side.
Yeah, I don't have any echo at all.
Yeah, okay. Maybe it'll go away. Thank you, Zoom. It seems like it's going away, so I appreciate that. So the thing that I guess stuck out to me the most, or just kind of watching, being part of your story as a spectator, was you still had such a great attitude. Like, it didn't make you frustrated or cause you like any missteps, or you didn't stumble over that at all in your day to day. Like, you were like, okay, I went for it, didn't work out, and I'm still going to invest hard in my team, in supporting this, this guy that was my team member that's now my boss. You were there for him. You were in his corner. You had his back. You fought for the team goals in support of him, and just it didn't seem like you missed a step at all. Like I really appreciated your attitude in that. And I'm assuming that's accurate on my side, right? Like watching you.
Absolutely. And that was, as you said, the person I was competing for was a teammate of mine. So we both reported into the same regional director before, and he was a lot younger than me. So I think at the time I was, mid 40s, and he was at least a decade younger, maybe 15 years younger.
Yeah.
And so as it became apparent that I wasn't going to get the job, then they started asking me, well, are you going to be comfortable working for this guy? Like, how's that going to work? And my answer was absolutely, right? I mean, I have a great job already. I'm happy in my job. I think I can provide more value, but if you don't want me in that role, then we'll just roll with it and keep doing a great job with what I'm working with. And so I made it very clear to both him and the leadership that I could work in that type of environment.
Yeah, that fair for the leadership asking you, right? Because that's not, from my spectator seat, I was like, man, this got to be tough for John, but it never looked like it was. Like it looked like you just were like, okay, and then then the opportunity kind of ended up resurfacing, and you got it and you knocked it out of the park. And you were in that role for 2 years. Is that right?
A little bit more, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit more. Yeah. And then, this other opportunity came up as overseeing one of the product lines, and you were able to successfully get that. And I've just watched you excel and enjoy that role too. Like it's different in nature, but it's still been fun for you, right? Like different problems.
Yeah, actually the same scenario played out behind it, or in between there, because my boss, that was the regional vice president for the East, left PTC. And so I immediately contacted the leadership and said, I'm definitely interested in that role. And he came back very quickly and said, I don't think that's the right role for you right now. And so, I was again disappointed because I really thought I was a great fit for that. But I said, okay, great. But I think what happens though, when you throw your name in the ring for these things, it causes people to look at you differently, right? Yeah. When you just have your heads down and you're delivering in your sales role, people aren't good organizations should be actively doing succession planning and thinking through, who are the people that really have talent and who's the next person. But even good organizations get tied up in the day-to-day and don't necessarily do a great job of thinking through those things, right? Yeah. And so that act then in the moment when it's time to have you need somebody in the role, and then you throw your name in the hat. If they hadn't thought of you that way before, well, then now they do. Right. And so in the regional director position, then that obviously put me on people's radar. The act of interviewing made all the people that interviewed me look at me differently than they had in the past. And then when it came up again shortly thereafter, then I was in line. For the vice president job is the same thing. So the person that ran North America hadn't thought of me in that light.
Yeah.
And, he had somebody in mind that he really wanted for the job. And so that person got it, but it wasn't a couple months later that a different role had opened up. And immediately I was given a call for that and said, hey, I know you wanted this other one, but this is available and we do think you'd be a great fit for that. And so, so just again, that act of, kind of stepping out, putting your, being vulnerable and saying that, I would like to do this and taking a risk, and even in not getting it, it puts you in a position to succeed in the future, right? So So I think that has played out well for me. I've actually done it again, even though I've only been in this job a year and a half. There was a general manager job for the company, which, are very senior positions that opened up. And so I stuck my head out again and said, hey, I know I haven't been in this job long, but I do think I'm a great fit for this. And turns out they did not agree, but that's okay, because that's a job that the CEO has to think about, and now the CEO has to think of me as somebody different. And next time one of those opens up, I think I'll at least get a consideration because by me having the confidence to say, yeah, I'm someone that should be in that role, it forces everyone else to say, well, maybe we should think of him, right? And so, but if I don't have the confidence to start that process, then it's never going to happen. So,
right on. No, I think that's an incredible takeaway. In some ways, I'm like, all right, cool, we're done here, because I think that's exactly what people need to hear, and to think of yourself in different ways as available for the next opportunity, and then to kind of put others on notice, right? Saying like, hey, I'm gonna continue to excel where I'm at, like regardless, and that's key, right? Because if you would have gotten bitter, if you would have got cranky and pissy, they would not have thought of you when the next opportunity came up, because it just wouldn't have worked that way. But with you, kind of continue just to be like, okay, cool. Like in the meantime, I'm gonna do this to the best of my ability, and then we'll see what happens from there. I think that's phenomenal. Hearing things that are typically discouraging to people, but you've taken them with. I know that obviously there was emotion, right? There was like, there's a bummer, like I didn't get that, but you kept moving forward strong. Another part of your story that I know you kind of alluded to earlier, that you were at IBM for a decade. You were there for 10 years, and you got caught up in a layoff from IBM. Can you talk about that?
Sure. That was a fun time. Thanks for bringing that up, Phil.
Yeah, you're welcome. I just like to remind you of all the good, exciting things in your life.
As a lead into the story, I would say that earlier in my career, I was pretty, skittish or fearful of losing my job. And I think I did a lot of work in over time in trying to get to the roots of why that was. And I would say that the roots of that for me was that I feel like, I'm the provider for the family. And so I have to, if I don't succeed, if I lose my job, if I, all of us, I have 3 kids and a wife, all of us are at risk. And so I really, really carried that around. But over time, I learned to, trust a lot more. And so that's definitely a faith thing, of growing in faith and just learning that, God provides, and that things are gonna be okay. And that if I lose my job, well, then great. Then what's next? And how we're going to work differently. And so that was a many year process. And so, I was actually leaving for vacation for a long weekend with a bunch of guys. It's a different story, but it was the morning that I was going to leave for that, and the day before, my boss had said, "Hey, I know you're going on vacation tomorrow, but would like you to give me a call before you leave in the morning." Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, okay. And so I just figured it was final checkup stuff. And so I had him on the speakerphone because I was literally getting ready to walk out the door. And my wife, Amy, was doing something else in the room. And my boss just starts reading the script of you've been laid off. And, this was right on the heels of the annual review process at IBM. And I received top marks and everything. And so this wasn't even 6 weeks later. And where after I had been told you're absolute top performer, all these things. And he's reading me the script. And so I keep interrupting him, like, what are you talking about? Right. Like, and he just kept saying, oh, hold on. Just let me get through. I have to finish the script. So he finishes the script. And then basically what they did was anyone that had my title, they wholesale eliminated. And then they immediately opened some new positions with a slightly different title. Yeah. And then after he finished the script, he's like, this new position is been created, and I highly recommend that you apply for that new position. And so basically, big company IBM, their whole plan was they figured there was a great tax write-off if they could do a restructuring cost, eliminate everyone with this position, and then have people reapply for the new one. And then, so long story short, they laid me off. I had 30 days to get a new job, but I had to go through this whole new application process. But it was such a great validating moment for me, though, for the work that I was talking about, because my first thought was, oh my gosh, like, this is awesome. Like, what's next? Like, which way is the story going to go? Right. Because I kind of was frustrated in the job anyway. And so it kind of felt like, wow, something has shifted. There's something new that's coming down the pipe here. And where is this going to go? And I know, had it been a few years earlier, I probably would have been in complete panic mode.
Yeah. Meltdown, devastation.
Yeah. But yeah, it felt good. And then it actually was also extremely helpful that I was going away for a weekend with a bunch of guys, because I had some good support around me from my family and from friends. And so, but yeah, that's basically how that all went down. So.
Yeah. And, like the lead up to the story is like, oh man, like how terrible, like you've wrestled with this frame of thought for a long time. Like you've made progress, right? And then you're about to walk out the door to go on vacation. Like, like, oh, this is going to ruin everything. Like this is going to be, but like your first thought, kind of like you said, an affirmation of like, no, you've been doing the work. You've been like actively changing your story, your belief structure, your worldview. And then, to say, okay, this could be really fantastic. And now I'm going to go, check in and have support around me with, these kind of fellow journeyers, is pretty incredible. So then what happened next? Did you apply for the job at IBM?
I applied, and it took the full 30 days, but I applied and got in the new role. The best part was when they got us all together for the first time, and the senior exec told us how it was such that we could not understand what a tough process it was for IBM, because they took such a risk, and that they could have lost the good people that they wanted, and they were just sleepless nights. And that was the point that I knew I would not be at IBM much longer. It's like, oh, you had sleepless nights. You laid off all these people and put them through this misery, and we're supposed to feel sorry for you.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So did the job hunt begin shortly thereafter? How much time between that and PTC?
I don't think it was less than a year, but it just, again, it's that mental shift. Whereas before, I'm a long-term person. I'm not a lot of people are in a new job every 2 or 3 years, but I like establishing a network internally and trying to make the most of it. So obviously I've been at IBM for a decade, but then that flips the switch that okay, I'm open. And then actually a former IBMer called me one day out of the blue and said, "Hey, are you up for having lunch?" And which I knew was a code for, hey, why don't we get together and talk about you coming over to PTC? And my response was, absolutely, let's go have lunch. And then a couple months later, it's all over. So
that's incredible. Not an entirely new story to me, but I love hearing you tell it, for sure. And it's kind of funny. It prompts a little bit of your part of my story. I went through a divorce, and I had been in vocational ministry for a decade. I'd been in new church work, helping to start new churches in the Northeast. And my wife, decided she didn't want to be married anymore. And so I was a single dad and a pastor, and was kind of walking in pretty uncharted territories. And, you and your wife, Amy, had been incredible friends, supportive through the whole thing. And a couple huge shifts in me happened at the same time. So, you guys invited me over for dinner a bunch of times, almost every weekend. And I can remember asking Amy, because, my wife had been a stay-at-home mom. So she had cooked, she had, done all the, the kind of household duties. And now I was doing those. And I can remember Amy making food. Amy always makes the best food. And I just started asking questions. And she could tell, like, I'm curious. I'm trying to learn, like, and understand how she was doing things. And so she actually was just like, hey, the past couple weekends, you've been asking me, how to make this or how to make that. Have you actually done any of it? And I was like, nope. And she was like, cool. I think it might be good to just have like a Saturday where we just make a bunch of stuff together. Would you be up for that? And I was like, yep. And so, she invited, she was like, hey, pick out a couple recipes, buy groceries. I'll send you a couple recipes. So, that are staples, for families. And that way you can, get those groceries, and then we'll just spend the day cooking together. And I kind of entered into, like, the college of Amy, and she was just this incredible teacher. And at the exact same time I was over there on Saturdays learning how to cook, my brother had been talking with me, and I had mentioned to him I didn't think vocational ministry was the right thing for me with kind of my family situation and structure, where the kids were coming with me. It was a set up, tear down church, because it was new work. And, they were coming with me at like 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning, and they were there until 3. I was like, my kids are going to grow up hating this, hating church. It's not going to be good news to them. It's going to be bad news. So I talked to my brother and was just like, hey, be thinking about, praying about what's next, with me. I don't know how my skills translate into, like, the business world or, not ministry world. And he invited me to jump into a sales role with what's now Room Ready. At the time, it was EDI. And I was super, kind of anxious about it. I mean, he joked around with me, right? He was like, Philip, you've been selling Jesus for the past 10 years and no one can see, taste, touch, or smell that product. So I feel like you'll handle, AV room installs. You'll be able to sell that. And I remember, just kind of confiding in you a bit, and being like, hey, my brother offered me this, and I think it's a real opportunity. I'm thinking about it. But I don't know. And do you remember this conversation at all, sitting out on your back? Yeah. On your back porch. And you were like, how's your relationship with your brothers? Cause it was both my brothers were in the company, and I was like, oh, actually really great. And you were like, do you trust them? And I was like, yeah, wholly. And you were like, if something went sideways, do you think you guys would still love each other? And I was like, yeah. I'm super confident in their maturity level. And you were like, so what risk is there? And it was just like this big, like, light bulb just like crazy went off. Like, there's none risk in this. And it just totally gave me the permission to explore, like you said, like just a different thing, right? Like, okay, this is a fresh start. This is a new thing. And let's be expectant and expect the best, and kind of lean in well to it. It was incredible. A lot of interesting time at the Haller House between then and now, and obviously continue to super enjoy living life with you guys, but kind of at that baseline of rebuilding, kind of foundation being pretty broken and needing to get started from scratch. You guys helped me in an incredible way, just kind of build back, build a new start, a new foundation, and move on from there. So a ton of gratitude and thankfulness there. On kind of that, talking about like sales, new opportunities. I'm curious, to ask you in the sales role, are there any just like stories that come to mind as like, super big wins or, kind of just funny sales stories? There's one in the back of my mind that I'm probably going to ask you about, that I think is funny in the service world. But anything that comes to mind as far as sales stories go that would be funny to talk about, you think?
Well, I think my funniest one is from when I was at IBM selling the CVS, and so I was with their CIO, and this guy wasn't there very long. It was a real piece of work, and this was a massive opportunity, and and we got to the final stages, and I've got all my senior execs on the phone and myself, and he gets on the line and he's like, I just want to start off by letting you know, you're not here at this point in the process because you're good. It's because you suck less than everybody else that responded.
Nice. Oh, thanks, Captain Encouragement.
Yeah. I was like, oh, well, that's great. I mean, I guess it's better than sucking more than everyone else. And so it's like, what a great way to kick off. I think that project was nearly $100 million between the services, the hardware, the software, everything that was involved with it across the company. And we're kicking off a $100 million relationship, and you're going to start by telling your main partner that you suck less than everyone else. So.
Yeah, we have very low bar set for you in the work that you're about to do. We're not excited at all. We're we're expecting. Early in my story, I used to be over at John and Amy's house because I always kind of worked from home, and sometimes I would work from their home. And I can remember lamenting, something silly that one of our techs was accused of, and it seemed like a weird accusation. I forget even what it was for the client to make, and I was like, that just seems weird. And then you told a funny story about one of your guys and a client that had cookies. Do you remember this story? You want to tell that story?
Yeah, so this was when I was at IBM as well, and we were doing network upgrades for a big hotel chain, and so one of the properties had called in and said, your tech did an awful job. He didn't finish the work that was supposed to be done, kind of left it a mess, and then on top of that, he ate all the cookies out of the basket that were up front for guests that are checking in. And so I called the guy to find out what happened and get his side of the story. And, he's making excuses for this, making excuses for that. And I'm like, and what about the cookies? Like, what were you thinking? Why did you take the entire basket? And he's like, I didn't take the entire basket. I only ate 2 and took 4 with me for the road. He's like, I don't see what the big deal is. So I'm like, oh, so you didn't take the whole basket. You just took 6 cookies,
just 6.
Ate 2 on the spot, had 2 in each hand as you walked out the front door. How could they possibly be upset about that?
That doesn't make any sense. They're unreasonable. I've told that story so many times. I just think it's hilarious. I didn't take all the cookies. I only had 6. Yeah. Oh, well then. Yeah, my bad. I'm sorry for even.
I don't see what the problem is.
Didn't even mean to bring it up. I'm going to take this back to them. So that was a super funny one for me. I love that story. I feel like there was another story. Oh yes, this is the story I was thinking of. So John and his wife a year and a half ago invited my wife and I to go on a double date. And so we were like, yeah, that's cool. What do you guys have in mind? And they were like, we want to take Handgun 101. 6 Hour is right around the corner. And, we think it would be super fun, to just go there and take a lesson and learn about it. And I've never I've never been into hunting. I've never owned a gun. I've never shot a gun. And I guess I've shot a gun a handful of times, like growing up in Illinois on the farm with friends, but it had been forever. So I was like, yeah, right on. So we signed up. We went, had a blast. Actually did 102 as well. And then John invited me to do an advanced pistol course at SIG. We signed up together. It was a 2-day long, 8 hours a day, and it was amazing. One of the best experiences I've ever had. If you're listening to this and you're in New Hampshire, like, you should 1,000% check out SIG, and instructions is top notch. But so so John and I are showing up to SIG in the morning of the first day. And, you get in the classroom of strangers, right? There's a ton of people in there that you've never seen, you don't know. And so we sit down, and this guy starts talking to us, so what do you guys do? Who are you? And he stumbles into the fact that he's a competitor of John's. And John, I totally want you to take it from there and tell the next part of the story.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he said, I told you before that I sell product lifecycle management software, which is called PLM. It's, it's prevalent around the world, but it's not like, if I said ERP, everyone knows what enterprise resource planning is, SAP. Not as many people know what PLM is. And so we asked this guy what he did, and he said, it's like, oh, I actually sell PLM. And I was like, wow. Someone not that just knows what PLM is, someone that actually sells it. And so I said, oh, I sell PLM too. Like, where do you sell? And he's like, oh, I'm actually with Aris. And Aris is a big competitor of PTC for PLM. And I said, oh, well, I'm actually with PTC. And so we kind of laughed for a second, I guess. And then we talked about where we sold and whatnot. And then he paused and he said, oh, I was really upset when found out that PTC won this Navy deal. And so we had closed a very large deal with the Navy earlier in the year, a 5-year contract for almost $100 million. And he said, I just completely thought we had won. He's like, I couldn't believe that we lost the PTC. And I was like, oh, I said, that was me. That was my deal. Like, I personally.
Well, so the best part was, like, he kind of like hung his head, and he was like, I mean, I just had this soul crushing loss to PTC. And John perked up, and he was like, oh yeah, go on. Like, what was this soul crushing loss? He's like, oh, it was this Navy deal. And it was just like, oh, so painful. And John was like, that was my pain. I inflicted that on you. I actually. Oh my gosh! I was just sitting, in the middle, like, kind of giggly, like, this is super funny. And again, like, John just always makes my heart smile, because he's just always so jolly, and especially when he's soul crushing the competition and sitting right next to them, like.
Well, I mean, to be successful in sales, you have to have a competitor's heart, right? And
oh my gosh.
And I do, and I like to compete, and I like to win, and so I felt bad for him probably this much, and then but then that was completely gone, and I was like, oh wow, let's talk about it. Yeah. Why did you think you had a chance? Tell me. True
salesperson. Oh, you have pain? Let's hear more. That's intriguing. Tell me more about that pain.
So I the odds of that encounter happening are so small, because Aris is not a very big company, and they they sure they don't have a ton of salespeople to end up seated next to the guy that he competed against. That was a pretty fun moment.
That you dealt a soul crushing loss to. So. Yeah,
that must have been nice to the guy, because he was he even invited us to his range afterwards. So
no, super nice dude, super friendly. He for as as frustrated as he could have been by that, he was also super gracious.
Yes, he was.
And had fun with him the next couple. That pistol course, though, how about it, man? That was amazing, right?
It was a lot of fun.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Kyle Lamb was the instructor. Absolute blast. Everybody there was super gracious. I mean, like there was supposed to be some minimum requirements met, and let's just say maybe I squeaked by the minimum requirements. Maybe I didn't completely make them, but they were incredibly encouraging, and obviously safety is a huge priority, and I learned a ton in 2 days. So again, if you ever have the opportunity to check out SIG and their academy, it's world class, top notch all the way around. As we're talking about, I feel like the optimism has been a huge part of our discussion, and one of the things that I saw in your house, probably, I don't know, within like the first like year of getting to know you guys, there was a little quote that you guys had tacked up on a board in your wall, and it said like something like breaking generational curses, or something like that, and it really spoke to me. Like, oh, that's so right. Like, there's so many things that are just like ingrained in us from an early age. And I don't think optimism is ever. I don't think that came natural to you. I think you had to put in a ton of work to get there, and that was probably even maybe like one of those like generational curses that you have overcame. I would love for you to talk about that a little bit. Like, is that something that comes naturally to some regard, or did you work for that?
I don't know. I think I definitely have a positive nature. That's there's no question. But it's I think it's definitely something that's cultivated as well, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the breaking generational curses. Every family has things that they struggle with, and bad situations. I joke that my family tree got put through the wood chipper.
Yeah.
Lots of divorce, lots of remarriages, et cetera, and so plenty of adversity on the family front growing up, and so Amy and I at some point just said, look, we don't want to perpetuate the same things that have been handed down to us from our families, and so we're going to be intentional about trying to stamp it out. And obviously we have plenty of flaws and things that our kids will deal with as a result of us, but we wanted to move the needle in the right direction and say, no, we're not gonna hand them the same set of difficulties that we had to start with, and so that's pretty important to us.
Yeah.
So
no, and John and Amy are definitely a little bit farther down the road than I am with their kids. You a college graduate, one that's super close, and then one that's halfway through. And watching the incredible kids that you all have, that you guys has been super exciting to us, and knowing that your family tree is gone through the wood chipper, so to speak, and then watching kind of like that again, that rebuild, establishing that foundation of what healthy family looks like, the way that you guys have invested in your kids, hearing stories about what your kids are up to now, and the way that they are call home and check in, and the relationship that you have establishing now. One of my favorite quotes from Will was when you guys were talking about like, hey, sorry, like the next generation, you guys don't have great relationships built with all your grandmas and grandpas. Will's comment of like, yeah, that's okay, my kids are going to have an amazing relationship with their grandparents. That just made my heart so happy to hear that. But I think that's a big part of obviously like what you guys, like why you've invested so hard in your work, is really thinking about then the opportunity that gives your kids, right? You've worked your tail off, to be able to put 3 kids through college and give them the blessing of no college debt. And then thinking about like, this next phase of your life, how you can continue um, to invest in, their future and again, opportunities for them. What is exciting to you, about, kind of building something now that you can invite your kids into? I know that's kind of part of what you're starting to work on.
Yeah, I just, it's been fun to transition to adult relationships with each of them, right? And so they're 23, 21, and 19 now, and so they're all adults, and so they're it's very different than it was, even 5 years ago, with each one of them, because they're kind of launched or launching and making adult decisions, and so it's like, okay, what's next? How do we continue to be a significant part of their lives and do things together? And so yeah, we're trying to take things that we've learned, and now in my 50s, and how do we help them to start off life with some of that wisdom, as opposed to having to wait 30 years to get to it. And so obviously they have to live their own life, make their own choices and whatnot. But things like trying to do some investments together and things like that can give them a head start and thinking of things differently from a young age. That's the sort of stuff that we want to be a part of.
Yeah, hadn't made this connection before just hearing you say that, but one time when I was talking to my brother, like he and his wife had bought a camper, like a 5th wheel camper, and they bought like a site or rented a site that you kind of leave it at for the year, and they would go there every weekend, and they had like this kind of dedicated camp site, and then a boat slip that was connected to it. And when I talked to him about like investing all that time in the dollars, he was like, yeah, our kids are teenagers right now, and really we're trying to find ways that we can talk them into hanging out with us. Like, how can we create a reality that they want to participate in, that they're excited about, and it's not like pulling teeth to get them to hang out with us, but it's actively. And it you had talked about giving Campbell the Dave Ramsey book and wondering if she would read it or be interested in it. And she was like, oh my gosh, like there's so much information, that they don't teach you in school about like, credit cards and debt and, financial literacy. And she was like, this is amazing. And now as you and Amy are thinking about investing, well, of course that's going to be interesting to them, right? They're young adults. They're thinking about, I think it was, maybe Will that was kind of fishing for a little help to pay for his parking after he went back to the airport, kind of complaining that there was like, oh, parking's so expensive, maybe waiting for you guys to be like, oh, we'll pay that for you. But, that didn't happen. So, of course there's, going to be some interest in like, oh, mom and dad are doing something smart with money and maybe making some extra money. Like, that could be good conversation, good further like relationship building as they're, kind of launching into young adulthood. So it's super cool.
Yep.
Nice. Cool, man. Those were definitely the topics that I wanted to hit. I really appreciate you carving out some time to sit and chat and hang out with me in the Room for Heart podcast, being one of my first willing victims, so to speak. Super appreciate you investing in me and my journey and jumping in and starting this new venture with me. So thanks a ton.
All right. Thanks, Phil.